All it takes is a small power outage, and you, your family, and your home are catapulted back to the Middle Ages. It's hard to prevent this on your own, but you can prepare. This isn't a prepper video, but rather effective tips for getting through life in the Middle Ages comfortably. First, you need to understand that virtually nothing works anymore. No power means no light, no water, no heating, no cooking, no working refrigerator, and no way to charge your electronic devices, and so on. Since you can never tell how long the power will be out, let's prepare together now. Many water systems rely on electric pumps. If the power goes out, depending on the region, the water pressure from the tap may decrease or stop entirely. In some pipes, some pressure remains for a short time, but during a prolonged outage, it quickly drops. This affects not only drinking water, but also something hardly anyone thinks about: flushing the toilet. Without water pressure, the toilet can no longer be flushed, and that quickly becomes unpleasant after a few hours. The solution is surprisingly simple. Keep a few filled water bottles on hand, preferably in the kitchen and bathroom. A bucket of water is more than enough to flush the toilet by hand. If you have a garden, you can also set up a rain barrel, which provides a free water reserve for exactly such situations. From the garage door, the path usually leads straight into the house, often through a hallway or stairwell that suddenly becomes completely dark without electricity. A flashlight is the classic solution here, but where you keep it is key. A flashlight buried somewhere in a drawer won't help you at all in the dark. Keep one right next to your bed, another in the kitchen, that's it. A small headlamp is also handy because it leaves both hands free, for example, to search for something or carry an item at the same time. When it comes to candles, it's worth giving safety a moment's thought. An open flame in a household that's already chaotic isn't a good idea. Battery-powered LED candles or small lamps now look deceptively real, provide light for hours, and nothing can tip over or catch fire. This way, you're not only safer, but you also avoid finding wax on the floor the next morning. Let's focus on the things that hardly anyone associates with a power outage. Many modern stoves no longer work without electricity, and that doesn't just apply to induction models. Even gas stoves often rely on an electronic ignition system that simply won't work without power. That means that even a gas line that's working properly won't do you any good if you can't turn on the stove. In an emergency, something simple is often enough. A small gas stove with a camping canister is inexpensive and takes up hardly any space in the cupboard. Check the canister occasionally so it isn't empty when you really need it. You should also keep matches or a lighter handy in case the electronic ignition is the only issue and the stove itself would actually still work. That way, you can at least have a warm meal or a hot cup of tea, even when it's pitch black outside. When cooking at home becomes difficult, many people immediately think of their car perhaps to go get something to eat or just to drive away. But there's a surprise waiting here too. Gas stations need electricity to run their pumps. So during a major or prolonged power outage, not only will the traffic lights be out, but often all the gas stations in the area will be as well. Nearby ATMs frequently go down at the same time too. This means your car will only help you if the tank is already sufficiently full before it happens. A simple rule of thumb helps enormously here. Never let the tank drop below a quarter, especially if a storm is forecast. It doesn't cost you anything extra, you just fill up a little earlier than usual, and in an emergency, you'll have enough range to drive somewhere else if necessary. A gas can for home use is the simplest solution here. That covers the 4 things almost no one thinks of first. Now, let's go through your house step by step and see what specific preparations you can make. Let's start where many people park their cars in the garage. An electric garage door usually can't be opened with the remote control without power. This can become a real problem if your car is inside and you need it, or if you're standing outside and can't get back in. The solution is a small mechanical release that almost every electric garage door has. Usually, there's a red cord hanging down from the motor. Pull it once, and the door can be moved by hand. Some manufacturers also offer a small external battery for the motor, designed specifically for situations like this. Find the release now, while you have time, and don't wait until it's dark and the power is already out. Preparation is everything. That's why you follow the channel. Light solves one problem, but not the next one, knowing what's actually happening right now. Without power, Wi-Fi usually goes down too, and with it, the usual ways of getting information. How long the outage will last, whether it's a local problem or a larger one, all of that remains unclear. This is where a simple battery-powered radio is a huge help. Local stations often broadcast exactly this kind of information during major outages, and a small battery-powered or hand-crank radio is inexpensive and takes up hardly any space. Your cell phone can also be helpful here, as long as the cellular network itself is still up and running. Mobile data often works longer than your home Wi-Fi because cell towers frequently have their own emergency power supplies. Some apps even cache important information locally, so it's still accessible even without a connection. So feel free to switch to mobile data briefly before assuming that nothing works anymore. Of course, this only works as long as your phone still has any battery life left. And that brings us to the next point. A fully charged power bank is one of the simplest and most affordable preparations you can make. Good models can provide enough power for several full charges of a phone, and some can even power a small laptop. It's important to charge the power bank itself regularly. Ideally, check it every few months, otherwise, in an emergency, it'll be just as dead in the closet as the phone itself. A car charging cable is also a good addition because as long as the car is running, it provides power for your phone, tablet, or laptop, completely independent of your home power grid. Keep both together in a fixed spot so you won't have to search for them in an emergency. And if you do manage to get to a place where the power is still on, the next point comes into play. Card payments and many mobile payment apps only work if the merchant's terminal can connect to the network. During a widespread power outage, this is often not the case, even if your phone's battery is still fully charged. Suddenly, you're standing at the register and can't actually pay for anything. The solution is incredibly simple and costs you nothing. Set aside some cash at home, preferably in smaller bills. It doesn't have to be a large amount. It's enough to buy some water, bread, or batteries in an emergency if a nearby store is still open and only accepts cash. With our phones charged, we head to the kitchen, where the clock on another appliance has already started ticking. After a few hours without power, the contents of the refrigerator begin to warm up slowly, and at a certain point, perishable foods should no longer be consumed. The most important thing to do during this time is simple: keep the door closed. Every time you open it, cold air escapes, significantly speeding up the process. A simple thermometer in the fridge can help here, because then you don't have to guess. You can see exactly what the temperature is when the power comes back on. A few ice packs stored in the freezer can also help maintain the temperature longer. If you store your most essential food items in a cooler with these ice packs, you can even take them to another location in an emergency. In the event of a prolonged outage, it's best to plan so that the food that spoils the fastest is consumed first. Right next to it is often the freezer, and that operates on a completely different principle. A full freezer retains its cold much longer than a half-empty one because the frozen foods keep each other cold. A well-stocked freezer can often last 1 to 2 days with the door closed before the situation becomes critical. With a freezer that's only half full, this happens much faster. A little trick helps with assessing the situation afterward. Before a forecast storm, place a frozen water glass with a coin on top in the freezer. If the coin is still on top after the power outage, everything was fine. If it has sunk to the bottom, the contents thawed and refroze in the meantime, and you should take a closer look before eating any of it. Aside from kitchen appliances, there is one system that affects practically the entire house: the heating system. This can vary greatly depending on the type of heating system. Even a gas-only heating system with a modern control unit still requires electricity for pumps and electronics, and will therefore also fail during a power outage. Oil heating works similarly. Only a few older systems with pure gravity circulation actually run completely without electricity, and those have become rare today. When the heating goes out, hot water usually goes out as well, since both are often connected to the same system. For the short duration of a normal power outage, hot water is usually not an urgent problem, but rather an inconvenience. If you have a fireplace or wood stove, you should regularly check to make sure you have enough dry wood on hand, especially during the colder months. During longer outages in the winter, however, maintaining a comfortable room temperature becomes more important. Warm blankets, a few extra layers of clothing, and closing doors to unused rooms help keep the heat where it's needed. Speaking of systems that usually run quietly in the background, one of them is directly related to this channel's main topic: your alarm system. While many modern systems have a backup battery, it rarely lasts indefinitely. After a few hours, or even sooner, depending on the model, the system may switch to limited mode or shut down completely. Cameras that rely on Wi-Fi often lose their connection first, even if the camera's battery still has power, because the router in between is no longer receiving power. So take a look at your system settings every now and then and check how long the battery actually lasts. Some systems also offer a dedicated SIM card as a backup that works independently of your home network. This is especially worthwhile if your home is often left empty for extended periods. Most lists on this topic stop right here, at the moment the power goes out. But the moment it comes back on has its own pitfalls. When power is restored, there may be brief voltage spikes, which aren't ideal for sensitive electronics. A simple power strip with surge protection for TVs, computers, and other expensive devices is inexpensive and protects against exactly this scenario. Once the power is back on, it's also worth taking a quick tour of the house. Clocks on the stove, microwave, and heater often display the wrong time after an outage and need to be reset. Also, briefly check the temperature in the refrigerator, especially if the outage lasted a long time, before you resume normal use. Smart devices like thermostats or cameras sometimes don't reconnect automatically after an outage, so a quick check in the respective app is also worth doing. Another point worth considering before any of this happens has nothing to do with electronics. If someone in your household relies on regular medication, especially medication that needs to be stored in the refrigerator, it's worth giving this some thought in advance. During a short power outage, nothing significant usually changes. A closed refrigerator will maintain its temperature for a while. However, during longer outages, it can be helpful to know where the nearest pharmacy is located, one that might have its own emergency power supply, or whether there's a way to keep essential medications cool in the short term, such as using the same ice packs we mentioned earlier. A short written note listing the most important medications and dosages, one that isn't just saved on your phone, can also be helpful in an emergency. This doesn't apply to every household, but for those it does affect, it's one of the most important items on the entire list. And finally, the point that according to the comments under similar videos actually matters most to most people. Coffee. Of course, most electric coffee makers don't work without electricity. What many people don't know is that some alternatives also don't require electricity and still work reliably. A simple plastic or metal filter holder combined with hot water from a gas stove is perfectly sufficient for a decent cup of coffee. French press models work just as well without electricity and are already found in many households anyway. For many people, this is more than just a matter of convenience. On a morning when nothing is going normally anyway, a familiar cup of coffee can make an amazing difference in how well you cope with the rest of the day. Most of these tips will cost you less than a few dollars in total. What makes this list special is that practically none of these items are useful only during a power outage. A power bank, a battery-powered radio, a few water bottles, these are things you'll need at some point anyway, whether you're camping, dealing with a car breakdown, or just going about your daily life. So you're not investing in a scenario that might never happen, but in things that are useful anyway and just happen to be exactly what you need in an emergency. In the end, it's less about the power itself and more about feeling safe and prepared even in an unfamiliar situation. For more videos like that, subscribe to Homeowner Secrets. Until then, stay safe.